Everyone has heard of the 10 Commandments, the list of thou shalt nots found in the Bible. Jesus saw in these commandments not onerous burdens, but guardrails and guideposts designed to help us experience the good and beautiful life. Words that set safe boundaries, create order out of chaos, help communities live peacefully, and protect us, often from ourselves. Every thou shalt not was intended to point to a life-giving thou shalt. These ancient words were given by a loving God who longed to protect us from harm while pointing toward the keys to a deeply meaningful and joyful life. Join us as we read the 10 Commandments through the eyes of Jesus.
Good morning. You didn't tell me that was going to happen, and how am I supposed to follow that? Just saying. I'm like over there in tears, like, geez, Barb, we wouldn't be here if it weren't for Barb, right? I am totally aware of that today, and I'm so appreciative of you. So, I know a lot of people who don't like their name. I don't know about you, but I know a lot of people who don't like their name, and some who still don't. They didn't like their name growing up, still don't like it. Some people go by a nickname. Some people use their middle name instead of their first name. Some people despise nicknames, right? Well, my name is Gretchen Williams. I am the office manager here at Sycamore Creek, and I have the privilege of being on the teaching team as well. And I've always felt like my name, Gretchen, was a unique name and different. I love my name. My mom always told me that she named me Gretchen because it means little pearl. She would say, "You're my little pearl, Gretchen." And she never liked it when people would shorten my name, like if they would call me Gretch or Gretchy. She did not like that. And so growing up, I felt the same way. I didn't want people to shorten my name. But as I've become an adult, I've realized that I actually kind of like it, because I realize that when somebody calls me Gretch, it means that they care about me enough to give me a nickname. And the very first person who called me Gretch, and I actually liked it, was Jeremy Kratke, who was the worship leader here at Sycamore Creek. And I know, doesn't it make sense, Micah? He made me feel good. It made me feel like he cared about me, and he enjoyed my company. So like I said, I've always enjoyed my name. I thought, it's different and unique, until there started to be other Gretchens in pop culture. So when I was in middle school, out came this cartoon called Recess. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. And there was a nerdy character, wears the glasses and everything, named Gretchen. Then in the early 2000s, a movie came out called Mean Girls. And there's a character in Mean Girls named Gretchen Wieners. Let me tell you something. You don't want to be compared to someone named Gretchen Wieners. At around the same time, there became a very popular country singer named Gretchen Wilson. And her big hit song was Redneck Woman. I hated being asked if I was a redneck woman. I mean, really. But, as we grow up, we grow into our name. We learn to like it and appreciate it. Our name becomes a part of our identity. It's a part of who we are. If I hear someone say Gretchen in a crowd, I'm going to turn around and see who's calling my name, because that's part of who I am. My kids and I went last month to the Gizzard Fest, which is an event that happens in Potterville. And they have food vendors, they have vendors selling their wares, the things that they've made. There's also carnival rides. It was super fun. We had a great time. Well, my kids and I rode the Sizzler, which is one of my favorite kinds of carnival rides. And as we were riding this, I saw Karen McClendon pass by. She is a member of our Potterville campus. So I shouted out, "Karen!" Right? And so she turns around, she's looking around. Well, she can't see me because I'm on the Sizzler, which spins you around and around and around and around. So I did tell her later when we were here at Waldemar, that was me who yelled out your name. But she turned around because that's part of her identity. When she hears someone say Karen, she knows they're talking to her. So that leads me to our first question, our chat question. And feel free to talk about this with somebody who's near you. The question is, did you like your name growing up? Did anyone ever give you a nickname that you liked or hated, and what was it? So today we are continuing in this series called Words of Life, where we're taking a close look at the 10 Commandments. Throughout this series, you'll find a bookmark in your program. There's extra bookmarks at the table back there. You want to make sure to get one of these because we are trying to memorize the 10 Commandments. So make sure you have one. Does everybody have one in their hand right now? All right, so we're going to recite the first 3 because this is week 3. So will you join me in reciting the first 3 that are on your bookmark? You must have no other gods before me. The second one is, do not make an idol for yourself. And the third one is, do not use the Lord your God's name as if it were of no significance. All right, so you might have guessed that today we are looking at commandment number 3, which is found in Exodus 20, verse 7. It says, do not use the Lord your God's name as if it were of no significance. The Lord won't forgive anyone who uses his name that way. So this commandment is all about God's name and how we use it. Let's say the commandment together again as we see it on the bookmark. Do not use the Lord your God's name as if it were of no significance. So how do we know what God's name is? Well, God gave himself his name. You'll remember maybe the story of Moses. He came to the burning bush, and God was speaking to him through the burning bush. God was giving him this command to go to Pharaoh and to ask Pharaoh to release the Israelites from slavery. And Moses said, who should I say sent me? And God answered, I am who I am. This is what you are to say to the Israelites. I am has sent me to you. I am who I am. Another way of saying this is Yahweh. It's as though he's saying, I am life, I am being, or better. I am the source and the sustainer of all that is. And did you know that God's people were afraid to say his name for fear of misusing it, as it talks about in this commandment? So you may notice in Scripture there are many places where it says the Lord in all caps. And this is where Yahweh has been replaced. They replaced it with the Lord, Adonai. And this appears over 6,000 times in the Bible. Many of us learned this commandment growing up as do not use the Lord's name in what? In vain, that's right. And I don't know about you, but I've always associated this commandment with cussing. Like when we hear people say OMG or GD, or some people even say Jesus Christ as a curse. And while this is certainly one way to interpret this commandment, I believe that that's not the primary way that this commandment was meant to be understood. This commandment is first and foremost about keeping promises and telling the truth. So today I'm going to give you 3 ways not to misuse God's name. And way number 1 is to keep your promises and tell the truth. Many times people will swear by God's name. Will say, I swear to God it's true, right? Especially if the story is totally unbelievable. If you've ever been to court to testify, you know that you put your hand on the Bible and you say, I swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help me God, that's right. And when a new president is inaugurated, they say that they will uphold the expectations of the role of president, so help me God. The typical wedding vows in the United Methodist Church use God's name as a promise as well. In the name of God, I take you to be my spouse, husband or wife, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish until we are parted by death. This is my solemn vow. So when we use God's name in this way, we are promising that what we say is absolutely true. What this commandment is saying is that you should not invoke God's name for a promise that you do not intend to keep. If you're using God's name and you do not keep the promise you made, you don't have very much respect for the God in whose name you made the promise. In society, one of the most important things we need to have is the ability to trust what people say, to take them at their word, and that people will fulfill their promises. The Jewish Study Bible says it in this way. It says, "You shall not swear falsely by the name of Yahweh your God, for Yahweh will not clear one who swears falsely by his name." Did you catch that last part? It said, Yahweh will not clear one who swears falsely by his name. That's basically saying that God will not forgive anyone who swears falsely by his name. Now we know God ultimately forgives us, but this shows that this is a really big deal. This is the second of 2 commandments on the list that has a warning. The first one that has a warning is the one from last week about idols, not worshiping and building false idols. It says there that God will punish your great-great-grandchildren if you hate him by building and worshiping idols. So this really matters to God. He put a warning on it because it really matters, that we would not use his name for a promise that we do not intend to keep, that we would not swear falsely by his name. It's so important to God that we see it in other places in Scripture. In Leviticus, it says, "Do not swear falsely by my name, and so profane the name of the Lord your God. I am the Lord." And we see another command in Numbers, chapter 30, verse 2. "A man who makes a vow to the Lord or makes a pledge under oath must never break it. He must do exactly what he said he would do." So this is very important to God, that we would not lie using his name, that we would not make a promise that we don't intend to keep using his name. This commandment is all about integrity. And integrity means that the person that I am when I stand up here in front of you today is the same person that I am when I'm in private or when I'm with my family or my close friends. Integrity matters in many areas of our lives. Have you ever known someone who didn't live with integrity? When you interact with someone like that, you don't really take them at their word, right? I have a family member who we can never be sure if what they're saying is true. Let's call them Alan. So we have a family saying in our family, when relaying information that Alan said, we say, "According to Alan," and that is to indicate that we don't know if the information is true, but it's what Alan said. Integrity matters, right, in many areas of our lives. There are so many opportunities in our lives for our integrity to be challenged. It could be when you're at a restaurant and you're given the check by the server and you notice that they didn't charge you for your drink or maybe like that extra side of fries you ordered. Do you not say anything and just pay the lower amount? Or do you call attention to it and have the server add that to your check? Maybe you're walking in the mall and you see somebody drop a $5 bill. Do you just pick up that $5 bill and put it in your own pocket? Or do you pick up that $5 bill and hand it back to the person who dropped it? What if you promised your friend that you would help them move into their new house on Saturday? Pastor Tom and Sarah are moving, so don't do what I'm about to say, okay? And then you find out like your favorite band is doing a concert in town on Saturday. Do you just go to the concert and, oh, there's going to be lots of people there. There's like tons of people in the church. Tom and Sarah don't need my help. It's fine. Or do you keep your promise and do you go and help your friend move into their new house? We live in a society where we don't even know what's true anymore, right? Integrity can be really hard to come by. We live in a society where fake news is used regularly in conversation. It can be so frustrating to listen to the news some days because you have no idea if what you're hearing is true. Same with going on social media. You have no idea if what people are posting is true or if they fact-checked the article that they post. And when you think about it, politicians have misconstrued the truth for a really long time. They campaign, making all kinds of big promises of what they're going to do, but reality is they're probably not going to do any of those things that they said. So all of this begs the question, what price does your integrity have? Is it really worth the $2 in your pocket to not pay for that drink that you ordered that they didn't charge you for? It makes me sad that the society we live in, we expect people not to have integrity. In the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus says, "Again you have heard that it was said to those of ancient times, 'You shall not swear falsely, but carry out the vows you have made to the Lord.' But I say to you, do not swear at all, either by heaven, for it is the throne of God, or by earth, for it is his footstool, or by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great King. Let your word be yes, yes, or no, no. Anything more than this comes from the evil one." Jesus is saying, just tell the truth. If the answer is yes, then say yes. If the answer is no, then say no. This commandment is all about promise-keeping and truth-telling. And that brings me to the next chatterbox question. You can talk to your neighbor about this question, or if you're at home, you can talk to the people that you're at home with. When you're not sure if what someone is telling you is true, how do you respond? I hope you had a good conversation. I know I did. So the next thing that this commandment is about is when we speak of God or we speak for God in ways that are inconsistent with his character. So the second way to not misuse God's name is to represent God well in your daily life. Now, when we hear the commandment in the way that we learned it growing up, do not take the Lord God's name in vain. The word take comes from the Hebrew word tasah, which literally means to bear or to carry. And then the word vain comes from the Hebrew word lasah, which can be translated to worthless or empty. So this commandment means do not bear or carry God's name in a way that is worthless and empty. Probably one of the most extreme examples of bearing God's name in a way that makes it worthless and empty is Adolf Hitler. He said that his war against the Jews was in service to God, that it's what God wanted him to do. Could you imagine what God was thinking when Hitler was planning on murdering millions of Jews, and he said that it's what God wanted? Oh, I think he must have been completely devastated for his name to be used in that way. This is clearly an obscene violation of the third commandment. Or what about the Rwandan Genocide in 1994? The Hutu majority began talking about the Tutsi people as though they were insects. Now, previously, the Tutsis had oppressed the Hutu people, but on April 7, 1994, the killing began, and after 100 days, nearly 1 million Tutsis and Hutu sympathizers had been murdered, and the church remained silent. Now, of course, one way to violate the third commandment is by commission, saying that what you're doing is what God wants when it's clearly against anything that God would want. But there's also a sin of omission, not saying anything when God's name is clearly being used in a way that goes against his character. These are obviously obscene violations of the third commandment. But there are also violations that probably seem more moderate, but are just as bad as these other ones. When people know that you are a Christian, or claim to be, but then you live in a way that is inconsistent with the gospel. If you do that, you're bearing God's name, and you're dragging it through the mud. So if I was wearing a Christian t-shirt or a church t-shirt, and then I was rude to the cashier at the store, then I'm bearing God's name in a way that is inconsistent with his character. Or if I wear a name tag that says Sycamore Creek Church, and then I'm unkind to a guest who comes to the church, I'm misrepresenting God. If I have a Christian bumper sticker on my car, and then I cut someone off or I flip them the bird, then I'm dragging the name of God through the mud. When my mom was still around, she would always say she didn't want to put a bumper sticker on her car that was a Christian bumper sticker because what if somebody else drove her car and then behaved inappropriately. She felt that would destroy her witness of God in the world. And the thing is, you don't need to be wearing a name tag that says, I am a Christian, right? If people know you are a believer, then you are still bearing God's name wherever you go. It is crucial that as a bearer of God's name, that we live in a way that reflects the gospel and truly do our very best to demonstrate who God is to those around us. For some people, you may be the only picture that they have of what God is like. Do you know what the top 2 reasons people give for not being a believer are? The first is that they experienced some kind of tragedy, and then someone said something to them like, it must have been the will of God, or everything happens for a reason, or God has a plan. When people who aren't believers hear things like this, they think, well, if that is what God is like, then I'm not interested. The second is that many non-believers say that based on their experiences, Christians are mean, unkind, or judgmental. When we misuse God's name by taking God's name in vain, we see in the gospel, when we misuse God's name in ways and use it in ways that are hurtful, pushing people away, or repels people from God, then we're taking his name in vain. We see in the Gospels that Jesus was the opposite. He was a magnet for non-believers. He drew people to himself. And that's what we need to be for the people around us who do not know God. We need to live in a way that draws people to God, not that pushes them away. Many people who were non-religious, who later became Christians, did so because they met a Christian who loved them, who was kind to them, cared for them, and sacrificed for them, and then invited them to church. So that brings me to my next question. When was a time you did not represent God's name well? All right, discuss that with somebody near you. So this brings me to the third and final way not to misuse God's name. And that is what you probably all thought today's message would be about. Avoid using God's name as if it were nothing. That's the third way not to misuse God's name. Now listen, I'm going to be totally honest here. Even I struggle with this one. When I was growing up, I was considered by many who knew me as a goody-goody. I didn't swear, I didn't use God's name in profanity, and I listened almost solely to Christian music. But as many of us do, I grew up and I lived in this world, and it's really hard not to let this kind of talk slip into our everyday conversations. And earlier I told you this is like when you say OMG. I found this meme on Facebook and I had to use it. My kids thought it was hilarious. Or people say things like GD or Jesus Christ when we're not intentionally invoking God's name. Rather, we're using it as a curse or an exclamation, OMG. In Latin, the word pro in profanity means outside, and then phantom, or the fanity part, means temple. So profanity is when you take something holy and you throw it outside the temple. So when we cuss or make an exclamation in God's name, we're taking something sacred and holy, God's name, and we're throwing it outside the temple. We're making it as though it were of no significance. So here's what I have to say about that. Just don't do that anymore. Okay, listen, I know it's easier said than done. When I began working on this message, I challenged myself to stop using God's name this way. But it becomes almost second nature sometimes. Sometimes I say OMG without even realizing it. Because of this message, I told my kids that we shouldn't say these things. So when they catch me saying it, they say, Mommy, we are not supposed to say that. And I always own up to it. I usually say, you're right. I'm sorry I said that. By the 3rd century, Christians stopped saying Yahweh because they didn't want to risk profaning God's name. So as I told you earlier, they replaced the word Yahweh with Adonai, or the Lord. So we see the Lord in all caps in the Bible. We don't actually know how Yahweh was supposed to be pronounced because they stopped saying it. So we've just kind of said, okay, it's Yahweh. Some Jews won't even write the name God. Rather, when they write God, they write G_D. For the very same reason, they don't want to risk profaning God's name. Now, I believe that God intends for us to use his name, but not to misuse it. We are to revere God's name and to honor it. The scripture tells us to pray like this: Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. We're supposed to hallow God's name. Hallow means to consider it weighty or of great importance, to revere God's name, not to use it and to consider it as though it were of no significance. So, and also, not only should we hallow God's name, but we should hallow Jesus' name as well. Did you know that the name Jesus literally means Yahweh saves? So we need to hallow God and Jesus' names. In Colossians, it says, and whatever you do or say, do it as a representative of the Lord Jesus, giving thanks to him, or giving thanks through him to God, the Father. So we, as believers, bear God's name wherever we go, and we should behave at all times as representatives of God, hallowing his name and showing that it is of great significance. So I want to challenge you to join me in the Lord's Name Challenge to avoid using God's name in profanity. Maybe try it for the next 30 days. The best thing about this is that we can do this together. That is why I love being a part of the family of God, because I have family and friends and family members who, when I mess up, they're going to come alongside me and they're going to pick me up and help me to do better next time. And trust me, my friends they will say, hey, you're not supposed to say that. So the point of the third commandment is to honor God by loving your neighbor and living as a person of integrity, no matter what the cost. As we move forward into the adoption of Asbury, we are growing in number, which means that we have even more opportunities to work together to bear God's name well in the city of Lansing. We live in a society today where many people question Christianity and God because of the behavior of some Christians. And I believe that as we spread into new areas of Lansing, we have the opportunity to come together to make an impact on the way people of Lansing see God represented. This new campus of Sycamore Creek will be a place for us to launch into the community. This could be another place for us to give artists a platform for their art. This could be another location where we can meet the needs of the poor. This could be another outpost of anti-racism in the city of Lansing. This could be a place where people feel loved, accepted, and safe, rather than judged, condemned, and unsafe. It is my prayer that we would help people of Lansing to see us represent God well as a loving God who cares for them more than they've ever been cared for or loved before. If we can keep our promises and tell the truth, if we can represent God well in our daily lives, and if we can use God's name in a way that shows the significance and weightiness of it, then I believe that we can truly change the way people view God and Christianity. Will you pray with me? God, thank you so much for the wisdom of the scriptures and the guidelines you offered us through these 10 commandments. I pray that as we study these words given to us so long ago, that you would help us to become closer to the people that you would have us to be, and that we would become better bearers of your name. Please help us to keep our promises and to always tell the truth. Help us to represent you well in our daily lives, and help us to use your name in a way that shows its significance rather than making it as though it were nothing. We pray these things in your holy and precious name. Amen.